My name is Kelley Pidhirsky, and I am a leader of the solution engineering team here at DocuSign. And I'm also really proud to be on the advisory council for the PreSales Collective's Women in Solution Excellence group here. So it's my honor today to bring us all back from the break and to get to introduce you to Andrew Braverman. So with that being said, Andrew, I think I see you out there. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kelley. How's everyone doing? I know this is a live meeting. It's not a webcast, so I know everyone, we're supposed to keep things on mute, but great to see some faces out there. So if you have cameras on, I can't see them. I have it up on the screen. Apologize if there's some background noise, just like normal in our business. It was a last minute, hey, go and come to this meeting. And I got on a plane last night and found what I thought was a quiet spot until I woke up this morning to them tearing the building right next to us down. So
it would be too easy if it was any other way, right, Andrew?
That's right. So I've built my whole setup here, and hopefully everything works great. And love to have some commentary, just a little bit of background. Andrew Braverman. 5 weeks and 2 days ago, something like that, I started at Pure Storage. I've been around the industry for a long time. As of now, I lead the enterprise pre-sales team at Pure. And as I said, I'm 5 weeks in, so I'm going to meet some of our team later today for the first time, which is great. Very happy to be here and share some of these things. A lot of these perspectives, my goal today really is to spark some thought and get people thinking and spark some conversation. I do have some more specific actions that I'm going to lay out, but 90% of what I'd like to get across is really getting you thinking about working things a little bit differently with customers. A lot of this comes from the work I'm doing at Thomas Jefferson University. Crazy enough, decided to go back to school, and I'm finishing up this degree if I can ever figure out how to sit down and go and write the book. And that means that as I move forward in that process, I'm working on pre-sales and outcome orientation and using this philosophy of ethnography to understand really pre-sales and customer engagement as a design problem. So I'm going to need some participants. So just so everyone knows, I'll put out a word later on if anyone would like to participate in that research side of the project once it's underway. That said, I'll get started and share with everyone what I'd like to talk about. Very happy to have some conversation at the end, and certainly like to get some perspective and feedback. Let me see if hopefully some of you recognize this face. If you don't, you should. I know today we had a bit of an outage on the internet, but without this person, who is Radia Perlman, colloquially known as the mother of the internet, although she doesn't really like that moniker, we would have no internet. We wouldn't be having this meeting virtually today. We probably wouldn't even have jobs, because what she's done, through her career, but starting really when she was a digital back in the 70s, she wrote the spanning tree algorithm, and that's what allowed networks to operate reliably. And she went on and did many other things in her great career. I got to meet her when I was a junior baby SE at a little company called Sun Microsystems back when they existed. She was a fellow, and I actually got an opportunity to not only work with her there, but at other times she became a fellow at EMC when I worked at EMC. And what a brilliant mind and great person. The story I'd like to tell is when I was a junior SE and she gave a talk, and everyone has been through these talks where there's 300 people in the room and there's 6 or 7 people in the front of the room listening. Somehow I ended up in that group of listeners, and she comes out and she starts her talk with this story about when her child was young. Her son, also named Andrew, as it happens, was about 5 years old. And he comes running up to her with his hand up, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy." And what does she do? Some of us are parents, and I'm sure you've had this experience. She picks up his hand and she kisses it better. And then she asks the question, "Andrew, what's the matter?" And of course, his response is, "Mommy, I pee on my hand." Now, why is that an interesting story? Well, the meaning of that story and the reason that she shared that story and the reason it stuck with me for 20 years is that it was a great example of needing to understand the problem before we try and solve it. And it's a problem that we all have, is that we frequently, as solutions-oriented people, love to go out and just solve problems. So it's very important for us to think about how problems exist and what we're really trying to do before we start to do it. Now, I mentioned the work I'm doing on this degree, and the degree is based on the work of this man, Russ Akoff, who's the father of modern systems thinking. Grew up in working at Wharton and then other places, and came back to the University of Pennsylvania to finish his career before he passed several years ago. But had a huge impact on the field of systems thinking and the way we look at the world. And Russ would say or talk about how we get things done. And one of the things that he talked about a lot was that working really well, great work, but going in the wrong direction actually gets you far further away from where you want to go than being bad at what you're doing, except going in the right direction. So the quote from him is that it's better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right. And it's back to the same idea that you need to solve or understand the problem you're trying to solve before you solve it. Now, when you think about where we are as pre-sales, normally SEs work with our technical buyers. In many cases, it's IT, but it may not be in other areas of business. But as we work with those technical buyers, it's our job to understand their problems and work to find solutions for them. And we think that by understanding the problems that our technical buyers have and trying to solve them, we produce outcomes. And the reality is we do produce outcomes, but those outcomes tend to be pretty narrowly focused. And they're based on the technical needs of our technical buyers. So what kind of outcomes do we talk about? We talk about things like application performance or total cost of ownership. Now, we think of outcomes a lot, especially because many of our companies do things like invest in value selling programs or outcome-based selling programs. But even with all of that, those outcomes that we talk about generally, and in my experience across the industry, is that we rarely tie those back to bigger initiatives for our customers. Now, it's really, if there's one thing that you take away from this conversation is that despite the fact that we talk about outcomes and we think about outcome and value selling, we very rarely actually talk about big initiatives or big outcomes for our customers. So there's a guy named Stephen Hackle. He worked at IBM for a long time. He wrote a book called The Adaptive Enterprise. And he calls these kind of tactical, localized outcomes outputs. So to echo Hackle, I'll ask the question, the age-old question, of course, what happens if a tree falls in a forest? Does it make a sound? The answer to that question is it does not make a sound. It makes sound waves. And sound waves are outputs. Only when those sound waves vibrate an eardrum that transmits that information to your brain through nerves and all of that is a sound made. Sounds are effects. Sound waves are outputs. And demonstrating effects is what we need to do as pre-sales to maximize the impact that we're making on our customers. Now, as we do that, demonstrating effects, requires us to consider our customers as systems. So that really brings us to the question, what is a system? Botanist and general systems theorist Burton Laffey said, a system is an entity that maintains its existence through the mutual interaction of its parts. It's a kind of a mouthful, but again, thinking about the customer or that we're working on as the interaction of its parts, remember those words. More modern systems theorist Gene Bellinger says that a system is an entity that produces essential characteristics that cannot be found in any of its parts. Really important concept of what a system is. Notice I used the word consider, though. I didn't use the word analyze. And it's a very important distinction because as SEs, we always use the word analyze, except analysis is only half of the picture. And why is that? Well, what is analysis? Analysis, the word, comes from the Greek, and it literally means to break up. Break up, and ana, up, and luen, loosen. When we think about breaking something up, we're only looking at its parts. I'll go back to Akoff, who says, what is analysis? You take something apart, you study the parts, and you put them back together and attempt to find the whole from understanding of the parts. Analysis gives us the nature of the parts, but it doesn't show us the essential characteristics of the system. I'll give you an example. If you were to look at a car and break it apart and look at the seatbelt and look at the wheels and look at the engine, you wouldn't understand necessarily how the car operates. None of those components by themselves have any capability of getting you where you need to go. But when they interact in the right way, they get you where you need to go. A great example that Akoff gave was if you were to assemble parts from the best cars on the planet, found the best engine and the best transmission and the best rear end and the best set of wheels, and tried to put them together, would you get very far? And the answer, of course, is no, because most of them wouldn't be able to connect to each other. The interactions would be impossible. So to see the nature of the system, we must do something else, and that something else is synthesis. And Akoff defines synthesis as taking something and understanding the encompassing whole or its containing systems, and then understanding that system in terms of its functioning in that encompassing whole. And to put that in language that I'm more comfortable with, you have to understand the context in which that system, that entity is operating. 13th century Persian poet Rumi said it, I think, a little bit more elegantly. He said, because you understand one, you think you understand two, because 1 and 1 is 2. But first you need to understand and. And I go back to that very first point. Radia tried to solve her son's problem, but she had no idea what the and was in that case. Bellinger also said it a little bit differently. You can study hydrogen and oxygen forever, but never understand this characteristic of wetness until they're combined to form water in an environment where, like Earth, where water is in a liquid state. So we must not just understand our technical buyers, we need to understand the purpose, the essential characteristics of the entire customer as a system. Putting that together, Akoff says, a system is never the sum of its parts, it's the product of their interactions. And that means we really need to understand no less than 4 things about our customers if we want to maximize our impact as SEs. First thing is our technical buyers. Component part, our technical buyers, of course, and the solutions that they provide back to their customers. We also need to understand their customers, another component part. We need to understand the interactions between the technical buyers and their solutions and their customers. And of course, we need to understand the context in which they interact, again, the system. Well, the reality is we already know our technical buyers. Most of our companies have initiatives to learn about the customers of our technical buyers. But again, in my experience, there's gaps in most of these places. And we don't have great access and we don't have great knowledge or understanding of those customers. And we keep trying, and we've tried for the entirety of our industry's existence to really get beyond our technical buyers, but we've not been incredibly successful universally. There have been pockets of success. But how do we fix that? How do we use the system and the outcomes and the understanding of effects to really get to understand their technical buyers? Well, their customers. Well, we need to understand, we need to leverage our technical buyers because we know them the best. And the reality is they may be resistant, especially resistant, not just when you want to learn about their consumers, but learn about their interactions, because they, of course, want to control that narrative. Well, how do we do that? How do we break through that resistance? Well, we want to deliver something of value. And to deliver something of value, we can then exchange that for access. What's that thing of value? It's our own understanding of their companies. The reality is most of our technical buyers don't know that much about their own businesses. And as we dive into the context, which is the fourth thing that we need to understand, we can leverage that context to provide value back to our technical buyers to then give us access to the remainder of their consumers and the remainder of that system. And by context, I mean several things. We'll start with the company's stated purpose. You can learn about stated purpose in filings. How many SEs on your teams go out and read 10Ks? A pretty important thing. Go look at the customer's website. We do that, or we think we do, kind of sales 101, but we don't always do it. We do need to learn about our customer's stated purpose. Very important for us to do that. But stated purpose is not everything. Stafford Beer, another pioneer in the area of systems, would say that the purpose of a system is what it does. So much, he said it so often that it became this acronym. And that means that the real purpose of our customers are not necessarily what they state. So how do we learn what the actual purpose is? Well, we can read about the customer. We can look at what the industry is saying, financial analysts, industry analysts. If we have access to their customers, we can learn a whole lot more about what the actual purpose of our customers are. We can read their reviews. Many of our companies certainly go and leverage review systems for our own solutions. See if you can gain access to those for your own customers. And if you're selling to a consumer brand, you may choose to become a customer and learn more about what their actual purpose is by experiencing it from that perspective. We also need to learn about what initiatives the company has for changing their purpose. Things like, what's their vision? What have they put on their roadmap if they share that publicly? But a better way of accessing the change or their goals for their future purpose is to look at how they've written job descriptions for new opportunities. So go out to LinkedIn and put a job search and get alerts for when your customer is hiring. Not just for those roles that may be associated with your technology. Look broader than that. Try and figure out their purpose based on the type of hiring patterns that they may have. And then finally, we should understand the markets in which they play. Frequently, we go and we look at things that are really focused on our own customer. And if those others in the marketplace aren't our customers, we tend to ignore them. So look at the other things that are going on. Utilize all of the sources that we talked about in the other areas, but look at them from a market perspective and understand the market context which the customer operates. Take a really big step back and try and figure out how they interact in those spaces. Again, looking at all of the different sources that we might have used otherwise and use those to understand those markets. Now, we should read and consume those things, but doing so as SEs might be considered heretical. The reality is, how many times have you heard that is not your job as an SE? It's the salesperson's job to understand the customer's business. I will tell you that I disagree with that just as much as it was the line painter's job to move that raccoon. It is absolutely our job as SEs to understand our customers. And I will make the argument that our SE brains and the perspective that we bring as SEs makes us better at it than the salespeople. Don't tell them I said that. They'll probably not want to work with me after that. But the reality is the way that we think and the way that we organize information, look, we try and solve problems. We connect different components of our technical systems together. Well, we can certainly utilize that skill set as SEs to understand our customers and connect those dots. Very important for us to do that, especially because sales and pre-sales is a team sport. And when we do things in a vacuum, when we let our salespeople just work alone to understand our customer's business, we miss massive things. We have huge blind spots when we're doing those things alone. So how do we participate in that process? Well, what we need to do is assign this task to everybody that we possibly can, to SEs and reps and specialists and whomever else you have on the team that can participate in the process. And then bring them together for collaboration. Hold a session, present, discuss, argue. When you put an SE in front of a group of salespeople, and the SE shares what they've learned about the customer, I've seen in my own experience, sales reps will scratch their head. They figure out that they don't actually know everything about the customer because SEs will always highlight something that they haven't. But just like I said, the salespeople have blind spots as they understand the business of their customers, SEs will have blind spots. And individuals that are focused on one area of the business may also have blind spots. So if you have specialists that come from a different perspective or different backgrounds, bring them into the process, make sure that they can provide their own perspectives. Put that all together. This idea of synthesis comes down to looking at everything that has been shared and presented and argued, and try and develop a collective understanding. Turn that knowledge into wisdom about your customer by understanding the shared context that everybody has presented. Again, really important for us to do this collectively as an entire sales team and expand that as far as you possibly can. And that will, of course, help us understand the context that our customer operates in. And that's step 4, right? But coming back to learning about the customers of our technical buyers. This is a big challenge because if you look at a 10K, you're not going to see the business unit's consumption of technical resources very clearly, right? So it's very important for us to, again, think about these technical buyers and the interactions between them and their solutions and the customer interaction with the technical buyer, because of course our goal is to gain far better access to those consumers that may be in business units or other places in the business. Now, I'll go back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier. We need our technical buyers to facilitate that and to deliver value to those technical buyers so that they're willing to give us that engagement and that context. So that really brings us to the question of how much do our technical buyers even know about their own companies and their initiatives? Have they considered stated versus actual purposes? Do they know the big corporate initiatives? Do they know what's moving the needle for their company? So if they're a publicly traded company, does, for example, in my business, does the head of storage in the IT group know what the CEO and board of directors goal is for the stock price? Do they know what initiatives they expect to be presenting back to Wall Street to move the stock price? Or what metrics, if, for example, they're a hospital system, are they measuring that are demonstrating the value or the quality of the care that they're offering? Things maybe like mortality rate or readmission rate that has a very big impact on payments that come from Medicare if you're a hospital system. So the reality is most of our technical buyers don't know this. And everything that we've learned from understanding the company's context is incredibly valuable in this particular space. So how do we address that? Well, the first thing we need to do is deliver that value by teaching them about their own companies and ask for access. When we ask for access, we're going to ask for access to their their customers, the initiatives that they're working on, and their perspectives on those solutions. So every time we deliver, for example, again in my business, we deliver a storage solution. How do their buyers feel about that storage solution? Do they care? How about the consumers of the consumers? If we go 2 levels deep, perhaps an application group utilizes the storage that infrastructure provides, and there's a business unit that relies on that application. How do they feel about the delivery of that solution, and what impact does it have on their business? We need to ask for access to those things. We should ask for their perspectives on the technical buyers. How is their interaction working, and what kind of value are they seeing? And then we should be asking for access to witness the interactions. think this is potentially the most difficult yet most important piece of figuring out where we're looking to make a difference. But when you deliver value about the context of the business back to your technical buyer, you've earned the right, and over time you can develop relationships such that you can participate in these interactions and witness what those interactions look like. And when we do that, we really get this opportunity to think about our customers as systems. And when we do that, ultimately, we need to synthesize all of the knowledge that we've learned from our context discovery and from our customers of our customers or customers of our customers of our customers discovery, and connect all of those dots utilizing the same type of connect the dots systems approach that we do for our technical solutions, and truly understand the outputs that our customers are looking for, and begin to present back to them the impacts, the effects that our technical solutions have for those larger, more important conversations that our customers have, or their customers and their customers, such that we no longer have a disconnection between the very technical solutions that we have as SEs and the biggest outcomes that our customers are looking for that really move the needle for them. And when we demonstrate that, we connect those dots, we can't be replaced, and we can deliver the greatest possible value. And as SEs, certainly our responsibility back to our companies is revenue and margin. But how do we do that? We do that by driving value for our customers, and we're certainly proud of delivering that value. We can raise the value that we deliver back to our customers exponentially by thinking about all of those effects that our customers are looking for and connecting our solutions to those effects. And with that, I will wrap and hopefully open up for some discussion and comments.
Wonderful. Andrew, thank you so much. First of all, I loved your imagery. It was really, really good, very compelling. There are a couple questions coming in, and if anybody has questions, like Andrew mentioned earlier, you can feel free to take yourself off of mute or add them into Slack, which I have an eye on here. But I'll kind of start real quick. I was taking a bunch of notes, and I think, Andrew, one of the things that resonated in a huge way with me is your point around, well, that's not really the SE's job, right? That mentality has been around for a while. So I think my biggest question for you is that while I like to think that's an old school mentality, it's definitely still around, Andrew. What have you done? Do you have any examples of how you've tried to help change that perspective for some of the folks within your organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go back to the comment that I made earlier regarding when the messages don't stop coming in and you think everything is on do not disturb. But anyway, I talked about that session where you can collaborate with other members of the team and bring as much of the team together as you possibly can. Those are potentially the most important ways to have that kind of mindset change. So what I've done is I found specific teams that are effective at doing this, finding SEs that are open. And by the way, I'll push back and say that we've got two problems with this. First, it's not just an issue with the mindset of the sales organization. It's an issue with the mindset of the SEs as well, because many SEs are fearful of this, or they feel like they can't do it. So the first thing is to find a group of people that you think are going to embrace the opportunity. Walk them through the process. Facilitate conversation. So pick one customer with an account team that you think can do this and ask them to go do it. Find people that, again, have enough confidence that they're willing to go out on a ledge and do it. Bring them in and have that conversation. And what I found is every time that we do that, the salespeople are surprised in a very good way. And will they necessarily talk about it? Maybe, maybe not. But if you have the manager, the sales manager in the room, then now you start to get this, hey, can we do this with the rest of the team? And you'll find that, or at least I've found that SEs and other parts of the team may be less inclined to do it because they're more worried about stretching out of their comfort zone. But they've now seen their peers experience it in a positive way. And generally, I have found no SEs that can't do this in my experience. And when we get them attempting it, salespeople tend to go and kind of work through that snowball effect, right? Pick one team, go do something. And again, sales managers love to have that kind of new perspective on their customers. And you can definitely start a kind of a viral effect by just doing it once, and then you'll get a lot of demand.
Spot on, Andrew. I think it's, to your point, a challenge in many areas. And the SEs, I think, do often feel really uncomfortable with that. I've had experience where when I was an individual contributor, one of my reps would say, let's play good cop, bad cop. Because, I'd kind of be the technical SME, but we all know that the second the sales rep leaves the room, they start telling you budget and timelines and all those different types of things. And so it was really good to feel that partnership with each other. But I have to call out too, I think to that point, Andrew, also in the leading with empathy session earlier, Elliot Newman was adding some information into the Slack, and he talked about this concept of sharpening the saw. Which really resonated with me as well, which was kind of like a weekly way to get people together and give each other feedback on your demonstrations and things like that. And I think this is a great point to add into that, to, have in a trusted setting, your peers be able to call out, like, Andrew, maybe this is a good area where you could ask that deeper question and let them role play and do things like that. So folks, if you scroll up in the Slack thread, you'll see that, what time was that? Earlier this morning, I'm Eastern. So like 11:53 Eastern, there was a really great thread about that.
I think, if you connect this to the demo and you connect, certainly the sharpening the saw piece is how you get good at it. But if you walk into a demo and your demo includes a conversation about an impact on your customer that is beyond what that individual that you're talking to is responsible for, the credibility that brings you is enormous. And yes, it's not just, technical demos in vacuums are only effective when the recipient already knows exactly what they want to accomplish. If you can determine what you can accomplish by doing that, and then you show them how. So what are you going to do with it? Why is this important? And then you show them how. We can certainly go a lot farther. And, I think we're generally, again, in my experience and seeing what some of the other presenters have talked about, we're pretty good at that. But most of the time we put that in the context of what can you as the technical buyer do? What can you accomplish? But we should be changing that context and saying, if you follow these things and you work through this demo and you take advantage of these capabilities, this is what you can accomplish as an organization. Just change your perspective. You'll have a lot more impact.
Yeah. And I think to all your points as well, it's not a company that buys a product, it's the person that buys the product. So if you can really resonate with them, that's huge. So I want to pause here because we do still have a few minutes. There were a couple comments, Andrew, I can bring up from the Slack, but does anyone else have any other questions that they'd like to ask live before I go into some of the commentary? I love that awkward silence. So Andrew, I was looking through the Slack thread in the channel. So a couple of folks share the following: very interesting perspective on customers and using that systems approach. The comment went on to say, many technical buyers are tactical and don't think that holistically they have they have blinders on. Great point. Depending upon what you're selling, it takes going higher in the account to find someone who will appreciate your story.
Yeah. I think a big takeaway from that is you need to, yes, agreed, but it's also important to leverage those technical buyers to get higher. And if you think about, well, that there are generally kind of two categories of things that are important to technical buyers, right? Things that work, things that they're not going to get it used to be back in the day, their pagers wouldn't go off in the middle of the night or on a weekend. Now their cell phones, they won't get a text message that something's broken. But the other thing is, well, what's their career path? What do they want to do? Do they want to impress those higher people? And I think it's a very distinct possibility. And I've seen it work where, like you said earlier, people personally buy. And if you can give them a better understanding about their own environment, you give them an opportunity to earn bonuses or to make their bosses happier or to make bigger names for themselves. Not everyone wants that, but and not everybody wants to be promoted, but a lot of people would love to be able to demonstrate that they know their company better. And it's difficult. They've got difficult jobs. They're implementing technical solutions. They're busy, and you're doing that work for them, and you're presenting it in a consumable way. And they may not say it right away, but then they go into the meeting. Suddenly their business line of business is in the room, and they articulate something, and they surprise them. And next thing you know, they've got much more credibility inside their own organization. So even with the very tactical people that may not respond immediately, if you give them enough understanding that they don't have, it will pay dividends.
That's wonderful, Andrew. Andrew, I can't thank you enough for all of the information you just shared with us. It's been really thought-provoking for sure. Folks, please keep the conversation going. Andrew, I'm hoping it's okay with you. If folks have some individual questions too, they can reach you on Slack as well. But some really, really good information. It's, as you mentioned, the stated purpose is only so much, but figuring out what the actual purpose is absolutely huge. And frankly, I see it as a great way for SEs in our organizations to really differentiate themselves as they are looking to just make a brand for themselves. They're really going to become very, very desirable in that aspect. So, Andrew, thank you. I really appreciate it.